little bit later than usual, and it's a bit damp and soggy evening in Swinton. I'm actually outside of St Margaret's Parish Church, one of the finest buildings in Swinton, I think. The church is not that old as in comparison with many other ecclesiastical buildings. I'm stood by the west door. Now, if you know the orientation of Swinton Church, if you're in the area, you never need a compass to know what direction you're looking at. Because if you can imagine, this is the west door, and so to my left hand side we're looking south. To my right hand side we are in the north side of the church, and to the back of me, where the altar is the east side. And traditionally, church altars were at the east of the church because that was the direction of Jerusalem. And if you look at some of the older graves, you'll see that the preference for burial was actually with the feet facing east, the feet facing eastwards towards Jerusalem, towards where the resurrection occurred in the Bible story. Now, I said Swinton Church is not that old, but Swinton was served by a much older ecclesiastical building, and it was from the 12th century, built sometime between 1150 and 1200, and that was what we called the Norman Chapel. It was a chapel of ease. It wasn't a full-blown church, and we're going to talk about that in just a little while later on. But that was built on land where the St Margaret's Church Hall was built. Just chiming of the bell, that Swinton Tower has two bells. It's not got a peal of bells. It's got a bell which chimes out the time, and then it's got another bell which can be programmed or manually rang. So Swinton's never had a peal of bells as such. Now, the Norman Chapel was actually demolished in 1815, and it was around about that time that there was a decision made to build a parish church in Swinton. The funding for that was around about £6,000, and most of that funding came from the Earl Fitzwilliam, and also the land where we stood, slightly elevated position. The ground falls away from the church building, was also a gift of the Earl Fitzwilliam at that time. Now, building of the church commenced, so for about a 2-year period, Swinton was without an ecclesiastical building of its own, because the consecration of Swinton Church didn't take place until the 15th of June 1817. So 15th of June 1817 was when the church was consecrated. The original building was designed by an architect called Mr. Pritchard, who was based in York. Now, it was a very exciting time for the people of Swinton, and so much so that commercially they produced items like this. Now, this is a very, very old teapot, and if you can read it, it says, "A present from Swinton," and then it says Swinton Church. Now, please look closely at the picture of Swinton Church, because that shows the original building. The original building was much smaller than the existing building, so that shows that this artefact came from around the time when the church had just recently opened. And so there can't be many of these around. The teapot is, as you can see, has been quite badly damaged over the years, but a wonderful thing to have, with a sort of pink and a grey glazing on the teapot. So that's Swinton Church as it once looked, much smaller than the existing building. Now, what happened was, in March 1897, there was a catastrophic fire in the church. The fire brigade attended from both Mexborough and Rotherham, and even though there were horse-drawn fire appliances, the appliance from Rotherham got here in about 18 minutes. And the firefighters did their very, very best to save the church. Now, they were very successful in saving. They managed to save the tower. So the Swinton Church Tower is the only remaining original part of the 1817 building. And inside of the church you can actually see watermarks of where the hose pipe, the water ran down from where they were fighting the fire. And also, if you're lucky enough to go inside of the tower, which I have done, there's actually still burnt timbers within the tower that does really give us that link back to that terrible day in 1897. So lots of people came to watch this fire, lots of agonising for the people of Swinton to see their church burning to the ground. And one gentleman at that time decided to pass round the hat. He took his cap off, he passed it round, and while the people were stood watching the church burn to the ground, they took a collection and it raised about £6. Now £6 in the 1890s was a lot more than £6 today. So that was a start. That started off the fund to get build a new St Margaret's church, and that duly happened. So within around 2 years, the new St Margaret's was built, and this is a fantastic photograph because it shows the entrance to the church before the church drive was reconfigured in the 1950s. So you can see the entrance gates here are long gone. I think these pillars do survive, but the gate was pushed back. But the new church building, you can see how clean the stone is in comparison with the darkness of the tower, which was a combination of industrial pollution, but also the effects of the fire. So brand new St Margaret's was consecrated by the Archbishop of York in 1899, in October 1899, and that's where we have.
Picture of that again to compare.
So we can compare the new St Margaret's with the much smaller old St Margaret's. You see the old one in the nave it's got 5 windows. It's got no the end building here, which contains the organ and the choir room. Has nothing like that, and a whole new aisle was built. Now that did cause some issues extending the church, because actually on the south side of the church there were existing graves. So the graves had to be carefully dealt with to save disturbance and for reverence. And when any of the graves did have to be disturbed, the remains were actually built into a vault in the new church. Most of the graves were kept, but some had to be removed and the remains placed into a vault actually inside the church. That didn't happen on the north side. Now we're going to walk around the north side of the church now.
Leave those.
So we're now going to walk around the north side of St Margaret's Church. Now there was an existing path here even when the old building was in situ, so they didn't have to disturb any graves on this side. We're advancing now to what we call Potter's Corner, the burial place of many of Swinton's great potters, but that's a story for another day. I mentioned the Norman small chapel, the 12th century chapel. That's an image of what that chapel looked like. And when I bring school parties and visitors to the churchyard, I say, I'm now going to take you through the oldest doorway in Swinton, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to now walk through the oldest doorway in Swinton, which was the remains of this door here, which was the south doorway of the 12th century Norman chapel. So the oldest doorway in Swinton, we now walk through. You can just about make out the remains of the pillars, badly eroded, but you can make out this feature, this ecclesiastical feature here, which stands alone, but it's sandstone, it's local sandstone, And sandstone is a sedimentary stone. Many millions of years ago, the whole area where we are now was a deep ocean, and the sedimentary rock laid down this sandstone by years and years, and so it's friable. The sandstone falls away and eventually will return to the earth. But we did, around about 15 years ago, get a heritage lottery project which helped to try and consolidate some of this stonework as best as we can. But so now we'll walk through the south doorway, just imagining we're entering the 12th century chapel, which was pulled down in 1815. Now the reason these stones were here was Mr. Bramwell, who was very quite close to us, one of the potters from the Rockingham pottery, actually decided to retain some of this stonework and remove it to this spot. So the chapel was demolished, but certain ones of the stones were retained. So let's go through the oldest doorway in Swinton now, and we just turn to our right, and we see the remains of the internal chancel arch of the former 12th century chapel. Can you see these stanchions at either side? The stanchions at either side, which supported the arch. And if we can look at this photograph here now, this was how the arch once looked. Well, this was how the arch looked when it was constructed. Now, if you can quite make out the zigzag markings here across just on the inside of the arch, that's always a bit of a telltale sign of Norman architecture, unless it's a later reproduction. When you see those zigzags, you can say, just as a little guide, that's Norman. Now, the arch had to be dismantled, probably. I think it was in the 1940s, because it was becoming unsafe. You can see the structure here. It was becoming unsafe, so they actually took it down and just left these stumps remaining. Again, part of the heritage lottery was we actually consolidated the stonework here, again just to try and preserve it. Now, some of these zigzag stones are actually still retained inside the church. They're kept in the boiler room, and who knows? Maybe one day, if a millionaire or multi-millionaire comes along, who knows? We might even see it returned. But I won't be holding my breath for that to happen. So, rather looking like the remains of an ancient religious structure. That's the story of the Norman chancel arch and the doorway right at the side, on the north side of St Margaret's Church. So I thank you for listening, and I hope to be back with you tomorrow at the normal time of 4 p.m. When we can talk about some other aspects of Swinton history. So good night and stay safe, and thank you for watching.